Welcome to the Agape Podcast. I'm Beck, a passionate, sold-out lover of Jesus who accidentally started a Christian singles ministry, and now I want to help as many people as possible to find their husband or wife while being super healthy and full of hope. So get ready for some real, raw talk about all things singleness and dating. Hey guys, hello everybody. Welcome to this incredible interview with this incredible woman. I am so excited to introduce you to Wendy Griffith. Wendy is one of the anchors of the 700 Club and also for CBN. But Wendy, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I know that you can say so much more than that. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and kind of your heart for singles.
Wow. Well, I was single for a long, long time, and so I definitely have a heart for singles. And in fact, I wrote a book called You Are a Prize to Be Won. Don't Settle for Less Than God's Best.
Come on.
And I lived it. And, I just love encouraging singles. I've been with the 700 Club, or CBN, 20 years, was in local news 10 years before that. So I've been in news and co-hosting and written a couple books, but I think my passion is, talking about people's love life.
Come on, and that is exactly what we're here to do. Encouraging singles, talking about love. I love it. And so I'd love to hear a bit about the background about how you came to write this book. What was kind of going on in your life that really sparked the idea of you are a prize to be won?
Yeah, so I was in my mid-40s and had finally met somebody I thought could be the one. And we dated for a solid year, and it was sort of a whirlwind romance, and it just seemed like it, kept getting better. And I was just, at the end of the year, I was fairly certain, or at least I was praying that I would get a proposal. Instead, I got just the opposite. I was told, he broke up with me, and there were, the reason was, I think, what was the reason? It didn't make much sense to me at the time, but anyway, I was devastated. I was heartbroken, and I realized later that I was heartbroken because of the dream. I lost the dream of being married. I mean, I wanted the wedding and the honeymoon and all the parties, and I wanted what every girl wants. And when it didn't happen, I mean, it was just so, I can't explain how heartbreaking it was. I felt like I'd missed my chance. I felt like it was maybe it was my fault. If I'd done something different, he wouldn't have broken up with me. And after a couple weeks, as I calmed down and the Lord began to speak to me, he told me, Wendy, you loved him, but you didn't love yourself. And then he began to just show me so many things. And he reminded me of all the red flags that I ignored. And then he began to then he said, no, he didn't say, will you? He said, write about your test. So God called this a test. I called it massive heartbreak. So as I sat down to write, the chapters just flowed, and You Are a Prize to Be Won came to life. And it was really about loving yourself first so that you don't settle for bad behavior.
Mm-hmm. Was there like a key revelation moment where you thought, oh my goodness, I was settling or I was putting up with this, that kind of led you to go, oh, I am valuable, I deserve to not have to settle and have an amazing godly man who loves me? Was there like a key moment that you can point to where that all changed?
There was a definite key moment after we'd been dating several months, and we were out to dinner, and he said, I love you, but I don't know if you're the one. And I knew he was marriage-minded. I was marriage-minded. I knew we weren't dating just to date. So that should have been a humongous red flag, and I should have said, well, you can take your butt and get back on your car and go back to where you came from, because I deserve and I love you, period. That's what I should have said. Instead, I was like a deer in headlights. And so on the one hand, you hear the words, I love you. On the other hand, you hear this but, and I literally felt sick to my stomach. It was like getting kissed and slapped at the same time, and you're sort of because I didn't know my value. I didn't know I deserved more. And that's why I encourage singles not to settle. Know your worth, know your value. You know, you're a pearl of great price. And if someone puts a but after I love you, especially, you know, if you're dating with the object of marriage in mind, and there's that but, then that person does not see your value, and therefore it's time to move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, come on. That is a good revelation moment. And so you had that moment of, oh, was that after you guys broke up, or even during it you thought, oh, I deserve better than this, but maybe I'll try and make it work?
Oh, well, when it happened, I thought, well, I'm just going to make him fall in love with me. I'm going to figure this out, you know, because, you know, when you don't know your value, you assume it's your fault. You assume it's something you're lacking or you have to do. But, you know, God made us, that's not God's way. You know, God is going to give you the desire of your heart, and he's going to bring that person into your life that sees your value and sees you as that prize to be won, and would never even dream about putting a but. You know, that but is a huge red flag. And a lot of people put up with it because they don't want to be alone. And I get that. I didn't want to go back to lonely weekends. And, but you know, everything is very clear in retrospect. So it was very clear that what I should have done and what I did, or, you know, two different things. So I kept dating him, until he broke up with me.
And that was about a year later, you said. So it was about a year and a half. Well,
that was about 6 or 7 months later.
Okay. Yeah. And so I love this, how you said, like, oh, I thought I could change his mind, like I could win him. And I think sometimes that happens to women where men say these kinds of things, or maybe are just not interested in the beginning, and they go, you know what, this is my challenge. I'm going to make myself what you want so that you want me back. And I would love to just speak to that for a minute, because obviously that's something that you lived through, that you spent time going, okay, I'm going to win this person. And so what was that process like for you? Like, what was going on in your heart to say, okay, did you become someone different that he would like more? Did you go through the process of having to actually say, well, we're actually maybe not as compatible if I have to change myself to make him like me? What was that like for you?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I literally had a dream near the end of our relationship where I was pushing, and he was 6'4", and a big guy. So I was pushing him up a hill in a wheelchair. Like, he was in the wheelchair and I was pushing him. So I was, you know, God kept showing me, and I was exhausted. My hair was falling out. Because all these things were happening to me physically. I remember going to the dentist and I said, my teeth are loose. I was so stressed out trying to keep this relationship together. And God was showing me he gave me that dream. I mean, imagine trying to push someone up a hill who's like weighs twice what you weigh. And I was exhausted and began to feel much older than my years and just worn out. And so, you know, God stepped in mercifully and made, you know, brought this thing to an end. Although all I felt was, you know, loss and rejection and just heartache, because, you know, you can fall in love with the wrong person. And, you know, sometimes, you know, the heart wants what the heart wants. So in the words of,
even when it's not the best thing for us, we can still want it. Yeah.
In the words of what's her name, Selena Gomez, she wrote
Selena Gomez.
But yeah, I ignored the red flags, but I write about that in a lot of these chapters, and it's and I brought a lot of humor into it. So, because I mean, there's humor even in the worst of times, you know, as you know. But
yes,
it was a hard time, but God got me through.
Come on. And so it sounds like you really, from even what you said before, it was kind of this sense of I didn't know my worth, but I didn't know what I didn't know. So, sometimes you think, oh yeah, I'm confident, I love the Lord, everything's great. But then after the fact you go, oh, I actually didn't really value myself enough to know that this wasn't best for me. Like shouldn't have to work this hard to keep a man or make a relationship work or, that kind of thing. And so where would you say your self-value was at the time when you were dating him and going through this process of trying to keep him or even make him fall in love with you?
Well, I thought I knew all that because the "You Are a Prize to Be Won" was a rhema word I heard from God years before the Lord told me that. And I, when we first started dating, I was very confident. I wasn't really even into him that much. And I kept telling my friends, no, he's not the one. He's not the one. And then there was like this little bit of, then I felt him pull away from me. And all of a sudden, this rejection issue, but it was like the enemy pushed a rejection button. And all of a sudden I was like, no, he can't leave, And so It was more about, not losing what I thought God had brought. Now, I really did think the Lord brought him. But the Lord told me when it was before he broke up with me, the Lord said, it's time to let go. And I rebuked that. I thought, no, devil, get away
get
from
behind
me.
me, Satan. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had gotten so invested. I was so invested in, I was in my late 40s and I didn't want to go back to lonely weekends. And I thought I finally met somebody and he was a Christian and I'm a Christian. And so, but if we fast forward to today and I'm happily married and I look back on that time and I think, Lord, thank you so much that you did not let me settle, that you intervened and you saved me from myself and you taught me such a valuable lesson that when you love yourself, you make totally different choices. You don't settle for bad behavior. And then when that right person comes along, they recognize my husband knew, well, we'll get to that in a minute, but
we're ramping up to the good part of the story.
We'll get to that in a minute, but so where were we? I can't remember now.
Yes. So I really want to just walk through, because I feel like there's so many women who are in relationships like this or may find themselves in relationships like this. And so I think even just unpacking it a little bit more before we get to the amazing victory that was on the other side, I'd love to ask you, do you feel like in that season, marriage or even the man himself became an idol to you? And that's why, like you're saying, I was so scared to walk away. I was so scared to go back to being lonely. Was there a lack mentality and an idol in play that you just didn't notice at the time, but now looking back can kind of identify a little bit more clearly?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I'm sure a little bit of that had worked its way in, maybe a lot, to be honest.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I really was, I really thought I was ready. God told me later I wasn't ready. And, but I'm sure that I probably did make marriage and the wedding and all of that stuff, an idol.
Yeah.
But I did always, I always prayed. I was always, trying to hear from God, and he was speaking, and sometimes I was listening and sometimes I wasn't. And, love is blind.
Yeah. And that's really real. I feel like we need to have real conversations like this. Like, this becomes an idol, especially for women. I think it's really easy because it's easy to fall into fantasy. It's easy to really get so drunk on hope that it takes you out of reality. And then it becomes all about this wedding and this family and a very idealized version of things. And so when we go through a breakup, we're not just losing the reality of the relationship, but all the hopes and the dreams and the fantasies that we kind of built up in our mind about it as well. And that's when I feel like the Lord really exposes some of the idols. Hey, you actually just really wanted to be married. It didn't necessarily matter who it was to, because you really wanted to make it work because you're moving towards something. It wasn't necessarily about the person. And I feel like that's something that you've touched on really well. And so I guess my next question was, how did you go through losing that and losing this thing that you had hoped for? And like you said, kind of became an idol in a sense of, oh, I really want this. And I'm in my mid-40s. I feel like I'm ready.
What was the breakup process like for you and actually healing and going through that deep work in your heart?
I just ran to Jesus. I mean, I ran to God. I needed to be comforted. I needed to hear from the Lord. I can't, I mean, I remember going hiking by myself and just, crying and crying out to God the whole time. And just, he was so, I could feel his presence. He really is close to the brokenhearted. And in that process, I also heard him, say to write the book. And so that was very healing. And it was so cool because I could just feel him over my shoulder, when I would be writing a certain chapter, and I knew that he was speaking. And I knew these would be rhema words for someone else who was hurting. Now, at the time, I remember saying, God, don't ask me to thank you that I'm going through this. And even after my book came out, I wasn't ready to say, Lord, it was worth it. After hundreds of emails and hundreds of Facebook messages and hundreds of people that contacted me, I finally was able to say, Lord, it was worth it. Because you healed, you touched so many lives, you touched so many women. And but it was that grueling and it was that hard. And so how I dealt with it is I just stayed close to the Lord. I journaled everything. I even went to IHOP, the International House of Prayer at Kansas City, for several days and never left the prayer room. Never left, had my journal in hand, never left the presence of the Lord. I was just praising him. In fact, I think I write about that. I do write about that and shared some of my journal entries. I kind of like lay it bare. I don't hold anything back because it was, it was just such an intense time. But yet it was a sweet time because the Lord was there with me every step of the way. And what I really want to say is, if you're going through heartbreak, or if you're waiting on the Lord for your spouse and you're tired of waiting, like I was, you got to get a word from the Lord for yourself. Don't ask a prophet. Get in his presence and ask him, okay, Lord, what are you saying to me about my future spouse? Why is it taking so long? Ask him whatever you want to ask him. Tell him you're tired of waiting, and wait and see what he says. Because after the breakup, and I don't know how long it was, maybe 6 months, maybe even a year. I was out walking one day, and I heard the Holy Spirit say two things to me during that walk. He said, "You didn't miss it, and it's not too late." And I mean, I hung on to those words like a life. Like a float, like a
life raft,
like a life raft. Yeah,
you got there. We got there in the end.
like a boat. Anyway, I hung on to those words because I knew I'd heard from the Lord. And when you've gotten a word like that, there's nothing that can shake your faith, because you can, and of course, write them down and reread them and tell the Lord about them again and again. Because I would go back to the Lord. Remember when you said I didn't miss it, and it's not too late. Well, then it got even better. One day I was on a plane, and it'd been about 2 years since the breakup. No, maybe closer to 3. And my book had already come out, and I still hadn't met anybody. And I was on this plane, and I was complaining to the Lord, as we sometimes do. And I said, Lord, I gave that guy one of my best years, and I was younger, and blah, blah, blah. And I immediately heard the Holy Spirit say, "You're right, Wendy, you did, but now I'm going to give you my best." And I mean, that was worth the price of the plane ticket. And I wrote that down, and I took that to the bank. And every time I would get discouraged, I would remind the Lord what he said to me on such and such a date at such and such a place. You said, "You're going to give me your best, Lord. You're not a man that you should lie," And then, of course, all the scriptures. And the other thing that is a must, if you're in the waiting game, like I was for many years, and again, I was over 50 when I finally got married for the first time, you have to have this person, this prayer partner in your life that is going to be there to cheer you on and lift up your arms when you have a day where you're just done. Like sometimes I would call her just crying. I'd be like, "I can't do this anymore. Why is it taking so long?" And she would just pray for me and say, always give me this scripture, Psalm 84:11. God will not withhold any good thing from those who walk uprightly with him. He's not a stingy God. He's not being mean. He's not withholding your spouse because he's not punishing you, because the enemy will tell you all these things, but no, God is too loving. And then one time I was in my prayer loft praying, and I said, Lord, once again, I prayed the same prayer a lot, like, Lord, where is he? And I heard, when you're ready, there he will be. And I was like, you got to be kidding. I'm like 52 years old. I'm like, but I knew I'd heard the Lord. I knew, his sheep know his voice. I knew that was God's voice. He was telling me I wasn't ready yet. So I'm like, okay, I'll be waiting over here patiently, not patiently, but it's really interesting if we really tune in to the Lord and what he's saying, hang on to those rhema words. We're not going to miss it. Of course, when when you're waiting, you're thinking, will it really happen for me? And yes, it really will happen for you if you don't grow weary in the waiting, because God is faithful. And so that's my encouragement.
So good. I love it. Was there anything else that you did that really kept you in hope during that season?
Yes, I decided I was going to enjoy being single, and I really developed my passion of mountain climbing. And I started, on my 50th birthday, I climbed Kilimanjaro, which was a dream. Then when I was 52, I climbed Everest Base Camp. And then that same year, I did the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu in Peru. And then I did the Tour de Mont Blanc, which is a beautiful hike through France, Italy, and Switzerland. So actually did that last one after I was had met Bill. But the other three, I did all single. And so I really developed, and I would make videos of them and put them on TV and just encourage people to get out and enjoy the outdoors. And a lot of people really were blessed by my passion, which was mountain climbing. And then I did a lot of mountains here in Virginia too. Since I've gotten married, I haven't done quite as many mountainous adventures, but we live on the water, so we do a lot more boating now. But I would just say, yes, keep praying. And because you always, when you're single and that's the desire of your heart, you can't help but pray, because it's always this sort of this longing that just is always there. But you can still have a great time, pursuing your own life and your passions. And it was mountain climbing that led me to my husband.
Come on, it sounds like you just lived such a full life and you weren't sitting around waiting, which I love.
Well, I had to make that decision, because it would have been easy to just, stay in a lot. And I did stay in a lot. And then I realized this is not working. So I have a chapter called Be the Prize. And it's about, wear that red dress. I literally had this red dress in my closet for like 8 years. And I never wore it because I kept waiting for this perfect date or this perfect guy that was going to take me to this perfect restaurant. And I was going to wear the red dress. And finally, I'm like, I got to wear this dress. So, don't wait to wear your red dress. Don't wait to climb that mountain. Don't wait to take that trip. Don't wait to enroll in that class. I mean, you're still a whole person, single. Even if you're still waiting for your significant other, you're significant. I mean, you have purpose as a single. Singleness is actually a gift. So is marriage. And they're different gifts, but they're for different seasons. And as a newly married person yourself, you know that it's different. I mean, there were things that were great about being single.
Yeah.
And there's things that are great about being married,
Yeah, I love that. That's so true. Like, they both definitely have there are advantages and I don't want to say disadvantages, but things that are just more challenging, harder. And so I'm really glad I enjoyed my single season like you did as well. I traveled the world. I can honestly say I did everything that I would ever have hoped to have done by the time I was married. And so that was, yeah, like everything I ever wanted to do, I did. And so now it's like, I'm not missing out on anything.
Exactly.
Exactly what you said. It's so good. And so if I can be so bold as to ask, why would you say that, let me put it this way, you're beautiful, successful, you're on the 700 Club, you're meeting Christians all the time, you're anchoring for CBN, more well known in the Christian world than most people would be, most women would be. And how did you not get married? I'm sure there's so many women going, oh my goodness, like if she couldn't get married, like, and not that you couldn't, obviously God had somebody for you, but what did you tell yourself during that time, or what were people saying? Did they think you were intimidating to men? Like,
listen,
what was coming up? Why?
I have a beautiful ring now. I didn't even wear rings on either hand, just so that if he was out there, he wouldn't have to guess, is that her left hand or her right hand?
He would know.
I really went that far.
Single.
And I really believe now that there was a veil that God had a veil over me, because when you belong to him, like when he told me that time, when you're ready, so he was saying, then I'm going to take that veil off. And in 2017, I was doing a series in February of videos, daily videos to encourage singles, called 28 Days of Praying for Singles. And it's still online on my, on Facebook. But I had so much fun doing that. And I can't remember the point of bringing that up now. There was a reason. What was your question? I remember it now, because you were asking me, how did I stay single?
Yeah.
Okay, so that year, I was 52, and I was like not going to let myself get down in the dumps on Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day was a hard day for me, because in that last relationship, we started dating in late February and we broke up in early February. So I never and the Lord told me that's because he wasn't your Valentine. The Lord never even let me be. So we dated almost a whole year, but both years escaped Valentine's Day. So, when I was
escaped Valentine's Day. I like how you put it.
But I did this 28 Days of Praying for Singles really to encourage myself, and it ended up encouraging thousands of people on social media, and got so many great letters or emails and things. And but I remember that was February 2017, and I met my husband in June of 2017. So I remember thinking, Lord, this is my seed. I'm sowing this into my future as a married woman by encouraging others, including myself, that they are a prize to be won. They haven't missed it. And I talked each day about, different chapters of the book or whatever the Lord, and I prayed every single day of February, didn't miss one day, because I just thought, and I was so pleased because with the feedback, because so many people struggled during February, especially February 14th. And because there's all you see is commercials about, candy hearts and rings and flowers and lovers in the park. And you're just like, screaming, like, when is it going to be my turn? And so the Lord, on Valentine's Day, the Lord gave me a prophetic word for those who were tuning in. We did a Facebook Live, and it was that this is the year of yes, and that God was removing the veil. And there was probably more than that, but those are the two things I remember. And of course, I was single, very single. And that word was for me too, because a few months later, I get introduced to my future husband. I didn't know he was my future husband at the time, but after a few months, I figured, oh, he is the one. Okay. So, God has an appointed time. Our job is to not to grow weary. God is faithful. He will do it. But get that word from him. Get that friend. And that will pray for you when those hard days, because there's going to be hard days. And that's, my biggest encouragement, I think. I don't know what I would have done without Rhonda, my friend, because she, she would just text me just the right time and all these scriptures, and it would be just what I needed. And then some days we would just pray for, an hour, like until, I was convinced, once again, I'm like, yes, God's going to do this. And you just have to, waiting is tough.
Yeah.
Waiting's tough, but you can't grow. You can't give up. You can't give up, Beck.
Yeah, I love that, because it's not minimizing the wait.
Yeah.
Because it is actually a hard season. Like some people go through a longer season, some people have a shorter season, but it still can be really hard, painful and hard. And I love that you are such a testimony of, oh, it's so worth it. Like, it was worth the wait. And telling singles that, because sometimes it can feel like, oh gosh, it's not, I don't feel like this is worth it. Like, but what's the alternative? There is no alternative. You are Lord. But it's this in between place of, okay, I'm going to choose to press in. I actually posted something recently that said, Lord, I don't feel like you're enough, but I want you to be. And sometimes that's the most honest prayer sometimes when you're single.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that, I want you, you're my Lord, I love you, I'm devoted to you, but I feel like I really want this thing, and if I never get it, like, just being you and me isn't going to be enough, but sometimes even just stepping in and praying that prayer, but I want you to be, I want you to be enough for me, so that I'm a full, whole person, that when this person comes into my life, it's not out of a lack or a need, but out of the overflow and the abundance of your heart for me. And so I love that you speak about that. I'd love to know, how did you go fighting bitterness? I think we spoke about this last week when we chatted, but everyone, people getting married around you, people having children, that are your age, might even have grown-up children. And how do you keep your heart sweet and keep in hope without letting that steal from you, without feeling jealous, or all these things that come up for people in different ways? How did you guard against bitterness?
Beck, that wasn't really something I struggled with. Deep down, I never doubted that it would happen for me. Now, I got frustrated. I got tired of the waiting, but I was always happy for those who were being blessed, because I thought, if God does it for them, he's going to do it for me. I remember once I had a roommate once, a long time ago, and we'd only been rooming together for a few months, and I was in my 30s then, and she was like, I really hope every roommate I've had for the last few months has gotten married, and I'll be so disappointed if that happens to you. Well, I got proposed to while we were living together, and she barely could speak to me. I mean, I don't want.
Yeah, that's hard.
I don't think, of course, that did not. The proposal was it didn't work out. So we didn't get married. So I just remember, wow, I never want to be like that, So I didn't. I decided to be happy for everybody who was getting blessed, and then when it was my turn, everybody would be happy for me.
Come on. What a great way to stay in hope, but also not let the enemy get a foothold in that area. I've heard so many people say, you know what, they have what I want, regardless of its relationships or anything else, but I chose to celebrate them and know that that was a testimony that will prophesy into my life of what, if God can do it for them, he can do it for me, and he will do it for me. And I'm just going to choose to stay in the hope of that.
Amen.
I'd love to talk about how you went about in that as well, guarding your heart, because the Bible talks about guarding your heart above all else. And I know sometimes it's really easy to let fantasies come in. It's easy to want to, you start to meet someone, you getting to know each other, you want to divulge everything about your life and create this emotional intimacy. How did you go about guarding your heart above all else to make sure that you weren't giving it away to people who would, I guess, like you said, this would be settling. This isn't God's best for me.
Yeah. Well, at first I didn't have to worry about guarding my heart because I really didn't like him that much.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just that I was like, whatever, oh, okay, you're coming over this weekend. Okay. But once I fell hard. I fell hard. And I didn't guard my heart because I just assumed, well, he obviously has the key to my heart because it's opening up to him. So this must be, so I was just like, there were no protections. And the Bible says to do the opposite. It says, guard your heart with all diligence.
Yeah.
For from it flows all your emotions, the spring of life,
Spring of life.
And I wrote a chapter called Guard Your Heart.
Yeah.
Because I had to learn the hard way that I needed to. And I was hoping, okay, I'm going to, hopefully if somebody reads this book and they guard their heart, then my job is done here. So you definitely, and the reason that you do that is so you won't get hurt. God is trying to protect you. Don't put all your cards on the table. Don't tell the guy you love him first. I'm old fashioned. I mean, let him tell you first. So, because what happened was I ended up, because he was starting to pull back from me. So I thought, oh, he needs to hear how I really feel about him. So
he needs that validation. I'm just going to tell him. Yeah.
So I just blurted out, I love you. Later, he used that against me and said, you stole that from me. I was the man and I was the one who was supposed to be able to tell you first. Trying to put, just adding guilt onto how bad I already felt. I think he told me that after we broke up, that was supposed to be his right, or, his choice when to say it and whatever. So, that was, so trust me, I didn't tell when I met my husband, I let him tell me first. He told me in a McDonald's.
Oh, so romantic.
We're standing in line after hiking, coming, and we were chatting about something, and he was like, I love you. And I was like, wait a minute. I love you. Is that an I love you? If you ever saw that movie, Something's Gotta Give, with Diane Keaton and Jack Nicholson?
I haven't.
Jack Nicholson says the same. It says to Diane Keaton, I love you. And she says, does that mean I love you? Or is that the same thing as an I love you? So I had to clarify that with Bill, with my husband. So
I love that though, because it's so real. It's just like we're standing in line, we're doing life together. It's not this magical, overly, commercialized, fantasized moment. We're just living life. And then he turns to you and goes, I love you. Or I love you.
Yeah. So he clarified it in the car on the way home that it was an I love you, but I still did not tell him then. I waited.
Wow.
I decided to enjoy, I'm going to savor this. I'm going to enjoy this, because I'm going to let him, and there's nothing wrong. In fact, I think it's right. Let the man lead. They're born, they're the leaders in the relationship, I think. So, once you get married, you can work it all out. But
and so, how did you go? How did you go with? Obviously, you're a little bit more well known. People might have had opinions. So, were people coming to you going and saying like all the cliche things, like, "Oh, it'll happen when you least expect," and how did you deal with the opinions of others when it came to your singleness, being in your mid to late 40s at this point, and having, did people say helpful things? Did they say things that weren't super helpful? How did you guard your heart from them and becoming kind of resentful or bitter? I don't know if people gave you unsolicited negative advice or anything like that, but how did you kind of navigate those waters?
Yeah, I can remember getting a little annoyed by even family members who I felt like just thought it would never happen for me. And, but I'm trying to think. Most people are so encouraging, especially in the Christian world. In the charismatic Christian world, people are always getting words for you. And so I remember, somebody passing me a card in church once, and this was a long time ago, and it was a long time before I got married. But it basically said, God is not, he's not a stingy God. He's not, it was based on a scripture that wasn't, the word stingy was not the right word, but he's not holding back on you. And in the right moment, in the right time, you're gonna be blessed. And so I would hold those kind of words close to my heart. And I never lost hope. I got tired of waiting. I got frustrated. I screamed. I prayed. I did all those things. But I stayed busy. And so, gosh, it was a long haul.
It was a long haul. And now the fruit and the abundance that you're walking in, let's talk about that, because I want to hear the amazing part of the story where God is true to his word. He keeps his promises.
He does.
Tell us your love story with Bill. How did you guys meet? How did you fall in love?
Well, our love story began on the grassy slopes of the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu.
That's really, I was like, wow, what a random place to meet someone.
That's actually how I started a chapter that I'm writing a book now called You Didn't Miss It.
Oh, come on.
I wrote, you are a prize to be won. Don't settle for less than God's best. It's going to be followed up by You Didn't Miss It. Your wait is not in vain.
Come on.
So hopefully that'll be coming soon. I don't know when, but anyway.
Well, now we're getting a sneak peek to one of the chapters.
So
it's a good product placement.
This was the summer of 2017, the same summer I met Bill. I'm hiking in Peru with my friend Jenna, and she's a lot younger than me. But I say to her, when we get back, and she's single, I said, can you fix me up with somebody? I'm not meeting anybody. Mm-hmm. And she's like, sure. Almost like she had someone in mind. And so we get back, and about a week or two later, we had a double date down at the Hilton at the oceanfront in Virginia Beach. And she had sent me a picture, and I thought, oh, he's nice. Okay. And Jenna Jenna knew this guy, Will, who was friends with Bill. So it was Jenna.
Will and Bill.
It was Will and Bill and me and Jenna. And those three had all gone to Virginia Tech. I went to WVU, which I'm wearing my WV shirt.
I thought it was a Wonder Woman thing.
The West Virginia shirt. So they were all friends because of their Virginia Tech connection. And so anyway, we all meet at the beach, and it was just a beautiful Sunday evening. We all he was very easy to talk to. He was, I remember the first thing I said to him after he opened his mouth, I said, where are you from? Because he had this very decidedly Southern draw. But he was from Virginia Beach, but he's a fisherman and he's a hunter and he's lived on the water his whole life. So it's almost like he's in his own little
He's
world.
been around his own little community that's like influenced his accent. Yeah,
exactly. Like if you ever go down to Nag's Head, some of the Outer Banks and those communities, boy, the accents are amazing down there. So that was like, I loved his. I'm from West Virginia, clearly, and I loved his accent, But anyway, it wasn't love at first sight. I thought, oh, this is nice to be out with somebody of the opposite sex, and we'll see. And then about a month later, the four of us met up again at this other event in Virginia Beach, this outdoors. It was summertime, and we had another nice time. But it wasn't like nothing was like clicking.
The fireworks were going off in the background, like how we expect it to be. Yeah. Then I heard angels over him saying, "This is the one."
Yeah, no, nothing like that at all. Probably just the opposite. I was not the opposite, but I would just say it was like, yeah, this is nice. Well, this is what he did right. He called me on a Saturday morning and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was actually kind of feeling lazy, and I was like, "I'm gonna stay in bed," And he says, "Do you want to go blueberry picking?" And I'm like, yeah. So we met and we went blueberry picking, and that was the date. It was like our third time. It was our first time just being the two of us. And I'm like, something clicked that day, like that touch on the shoulder or something. I'm like,
You both went for the same blueberry, and you're like, oh no, it's so cute.
Oh, it was funny because it was the end of blueberry season, and there weren't many blueberries left on the bushes, but there were just enough that we could get a. And we still have a bag of frozen blueberries in the freezer from that time.
No.
I said, honey, we can never eat these. You know that they're just always going to be.
I don't know if they'd still be good.
They're exactly. I mean, they just have to stay in the freezer forever because we can never eat them.
That is the cutest.
So from there, we dated pretty much. That's when we really started dating, was like after that date, and then saw each other on a more regular basis, like every week, but we lived in the same town. So it was much easier than my previous relationship he was out of town. So this was much easier, even though we were 30 minutes away because he lived at the beach and I lived inland. So he always kidded me that I lived in the western part of the state because he lived right on the ocean, So, Virginia, but he kidded me. But we had a wonderful summer.
Oh,
and,
that's right. I forgot about that part. Okay, so talk us through that. What was going on there?
I hate. No, I hate talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like,
that's fine. That's just
talking about this.
That's fine. That's just
please keep this page open. You can still hang up or reload. Okay, just rip. Okay, yeah. So we broke up because I freaked out. I realized I was falling in love with him, and I wanted to I didn't know for sure if it was the Lord because we were a little bit different spiritually. I mean, I worked at 700 Club, and he was a banker.
Expressing his faith in the same way as you do.
He wasn't necessarily a church in the same way, but he did love God, and we prayed together, and we went to church together. So after 3 days of being apart, the Lord spoke to me in a really interesting way, and that I knew that I'd made a mistake. And so we had, he went to Virginia Tech, I went to WVU, and there was a big football game happening on Labor Day. And I thought, and his team won. So Virginia Tech won. So I texted him, this is like 3 days later. And I said, congratulations. And he writes back, I think we had a bet on this, right? And I'm like, I didn't really remember, but I'm like, sure, you name it. And he's like, take me hiking. I'm like, okay. And then we never looked back. I mean, we literally were only broken up for 3 days, and he acted like it never happened.
We'll just forget that ever happened.
Yeah. So he was so cool about it. And he said, I asked him, I said, what would you have done if I didn't reach out with that text? And he said, I was going to get in touch with you again. I was just giving you a couple days to, realize you made a mistake. But, so, after that, we never looked back. And then we got married. We got engaged, in September of 2018 at the top of Old Rag Mountain, my favorite mountain in Virginia. And then we got married in February of 2019. So we've been married now 2 years. And
54. Come on. Mm-hmm.
54.
And he had been married previously, you said, too.
And Bill was 58. Mm-hmm. And, right, but no children. And we had 2 dogs, but they have...
Wow, what an incredible story.
So,
sorry, keep going. Keep going. Are you going to start it halfway through?
Yeah. So, huh? Oh, yeah. So, but it was the wedding. I mean, it's so funny because, I thought it was a great wedding, but my friend Rhonda, who prayed for me, and she was there, and her husband actually did the what do you call it? He was our preacher. Yeah, yeah. And she said, other than her wedding, it was the best, the most fun she's ever had at a wedding. And all I remember from the wedding, I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and they're all married, and everybody just had such big smiles on their face. It was like there was so much joy at my wedding, and I think people were so genuinely happy. But there was an anointing of joy, like because the Lord was there, and people felt it. So
wow,
it was a very special wedding. And then we had a special honeymoon
from Australia,
in Africa,
not Africa.
And you're from
no, the other country that starts with A.
Right, you're from you're from
continent.
I was like, are you from South Africa?
That is so funny. I'm from Australia. Wow, that is such an incredible testimony. And so
you're from
getting married at 54, living just in the promise that the Lord had for you. And it's kind of incredible because you couldn't have met him any earlier because he was, going through his process, going through a divorce, unfortunately, and just, I love how it kind of came full circle. I feel like the last thing I'd love to ask about, because I know people will be thinking this, and, people who are a little bit later in life or maybe getting married for the first time, women especially, thinking, how do you feel about kids now? Having, being 54 when you got married, what's your stance on having children? Where are you at with that?
I like kids. I was never super maternal, I want to, I have to have 6 kids, or I really need to do this, but I was always open. I always wanted God's will, so I figured if God, if God still wants me to have a baby, then I'll be Sarah, I'm not 90 yet. So, you can still have time. I think my husband would be a little mortified. He's eyeing retirement and thinking about all the hunting and fishing trips that, he can go on. But, it was never the deep desire. Some women from the age of 12, they just can't wait to be mothers. I couldn't wait to be a broadcaster. I couldn't wait to be that news anchor and reporter and travel the world and all that. And God blessed me to do that. And I've done that now for over 30 years. And then he lets me get married. And, I always tell the Lord, I don't want to just be married for the sake of being married. I want to be in love. I want to be in love with my husband. And God gave me that desire. And I always made that very clear. Lord, I've got a great job. I don't need to get married for income, for security. And there's nothing wrong with that, because when you do get married and you double your income, it's great, because you do, that is a blessing, and it is a bonus, and it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. But my heart's desire is, Lord, I want to be in love. So don't settle. Do not settle. If you never get married just because it's the right time, or he looks good on paper, or the Lord told me one time, don't compromise. Don't compromise, because you'll never be happy. It's better to be alone and single and waiting and
wishing you were single
and living your life.
Yeah, that would be terrible.
Than to be with the wrong person. And I know. Yeah. Yeah, but you're right. My husband was going through his own dark night of the soul after his divorce, and he was developing his relationship with the Lord and praying a lot. And by the time he met me, he was ready to meet someone different.
Come on.
I
have one last question, and I am so excited to hear the answer for this. Was it worth the wait? You're 54, you met him. Give us some hope. Was it worth waiting those 54 years until you became his bride?
Absolutely worth the wait. And just think, I met him when I was 52, almost 53, but everything I did, when I turned 50, things I did from 50 to 52, I crammed a lot just in those 2 years. And, the Lord was at work, and I was having a great time in my early 50s up until the time I met Bill. And when I met Bill, I was, It's funny because a lot of times it'll feel anticlimactic, like, you want something to happen so badly, and then it doesn't happen at that timing. And then when it does happen, it's like, oh, okay, because God always wants to be first, and if we, like you said, if you make something an idol, and if you make marriage an idol, if you make your job an idol, whatever, it's God's not going to be pleased with that, because he wants us to put him first, seek first the kingdom and all these other things. So he will give us those things. But I think I probably had to go through that process of just laying it down. And, but now, 2 years in, I can say I'm more in love with my husband now than I was when we got married. I mean, I'm just crazy about him. It's just like, so I just thank God every day. I just feel so blessed, because I keep learning new things about him, because we only dated a year and a half before we got married. And we did wait. We waited till our wedding night, even though we were older,
Come on.
And
that is hope for people too, like, especially if they've been married before,
so
and it's like,
possible.
oh, my body's been alive to this, and now I am learning to manage my sexual urges again until I'm married. Whether it's somebody who's passed away, or that had a partner passed away, or is divorced, or has, I think we have a similar testimony, haven't always been a Christian, become a Christian, radically changed. Like a born again virgin, I think you said for like 30 years when we spoke last. 25. Okay. 25.
25. Don't make it longer than it was. But my husband was so sweet about it. He was like, I would never take that away from you.
Yeah. But
not that I was a virgin. I was a born again virgin.
Come on. And it was worth it. It was worth it on the wedding day, the wedding night. And
I just love that.
Every moment after. I love that the Lord has absolutely kind of redeemed those times for you where you were waiting and said, like, hey, this is what I had. And I think you would probably agree that if you hadn't known what God had for you, you would never have doubted his faithfulness, or even thought, is he going to come through? What are you doing, Lord? But actually seeing what he had for you. I just love that. I think this is going to bring so much encouragement to so many people. And I love the joy that you have. I love that you didn't allow it to make you bitter, to, get angry at God, for seasons. Some people have, fall into some really tough times because they're not getting what their heart desires. And I just love that you kept your heart sweet. You didn't let bitterness come and take a root, and you were just living your best life. And then you're able to meet someone and you are healthy and full of life and full of joy, and able to bring your full self to them. And you didn't just wait around, and you didn't settle. You waited for God's best for you and met your perfect match. And so I am just so thankful, Wendy, for you, for coming in, for your story, for your testimony, and just the amazing impact it's having in the world. And so just want to thank you for sharing. Like, that was really incredible. And I know it's going to help so many people. So thank you so much.
Well, you're so welcome. It was a pleasure. And I really appreciate how you are ministering to singles, because they need it, and I needed it when I was single. And
yes, I have it on my wall. 100,000.
Let's keep seeing those kingdom marriages.
Through my ministry. That's our first goal. I'm like, that's my first one. God gave it to me. I'm like, let's see 100,000 kingdom marriages come together. How much would that change the world?
Oh my goodness, that is wow!
It's a big God.
Like
Let's do it.
A big number.
Thanks so much,
This
Wendy.
is a big God, and I say yes and amen. Let's do this.
Go.
Okay, God bless you. Bye bye.